Hi, my name is Wendy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a crochet poppy. I'll be using UK double knitting weight yarn. I've got a crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm for today's one so that it's clear to show you, but the poppy I made here earlier, for that I used a 3mm hook to get a tighter effect. So if you're new to crochet, I'd say start with the 4mm, and then if you're more experienced or you're progressing on, then make your way down to a 3.5 or a 3mm hook. I've also got a sewing needle, a wool type tapestry sewing needle to darn in my ends, a pair of scissors to have at hand, and it's handy to have a safety pin style stitch marker or a couple of scraps of yarn just to show you where the beginning of your rows will be when you're making your petals. I'm using UK stitch terminology and will be using chain stitches, the double crochet stitch and the treble stitch. And I also have the pattern on my website, which I will put in the link below, where you can download that as a printable free PDF. So I'll clear the way and we'll get going. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to make this disc, which consists of 16 stitches all together around the edge. When I turn over my finished poppy that I made earlier, you can see that this is the central part of the flower that we're going to make. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to make a slip knot. So I'm going to wind the yarn around my fingers so I've got 2 loops, take my hook underneath the top one and then just pull the bottom loop through, and I have my slip knot on my hook. I'm now going to make 4 chain, so that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then I'm going to join that into a small ring. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to pop it through the center of the very first stitch I made after the slip knot. So that's the very first chain after the slip knot. So I'm just going to put my hook through the middle. So I've got this U shape now hanging off my hook, yarn over the hook and pull the yarn through both. So that is our small little ring that we're going to be working into. So I'm now going to make 3 chain, and that is going to represent my first stitch. So altogether I'm going to have 16 stitches, 16 trebles going around here, but as this 3 chain is representing the first stitch, I only now need to make 15 trebles. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop my stitch marker through that very first stitch that's sitting underneath my hook, so you can see it here. And then what that will do is when we get back to the end of the round and we want to join our round together, we'll be able to see very clearly where to make our slip stitch. So I'm just going to now make 15 treble. So just to do a recap for you, for a treble stitch, it's yarn over the hook, and then you put the hook through the central hole, and then the yarn goes over the hook again and you pull the hook back through and you have 3 stitches on your hook. Then you put the yarn over the hook and you draw it back through the first 2, and then you put the yarn over the hook again and you draw it through the last 2. So I'm going to do one more just as a recap for the treble stitch. So it's yarn over the hook, take the hook through the hole, yarn over the hook again and pull the yarn back through, and you've got 1, 2, 3 stitches on your hook. Then it's yarn over the hook and pull it back through the first 2 stitches, and I've got 2 stitches left on my hook. Then it's yarn over the hook and then pull it back through to the last one. So now I have my first 3 chain, that's representing the first stitch, and then I've made 2 trebles, so I've got 3 altogether. So now I'm going to continue round until I've made 15 trebles. I now have my 15 trebles worked around in the ring, and I can see, because I put that stitch marker in, I can see exactly where I'm going to join my round with my slip stitch. So I'm just going to take that out now so I can see where it is. And then I'm just going to pop my hook through and join up that first circle. And then with the slip stitch, yarn over the hook and then pull through both stitches. And that is the first round complete. The next point is to now start making my individual petals. So the petals have 3 rows. The first 2 rows consist of the treble stitch, and the last row is just simply an edging made from double crochet and chain stitches. So the first thing that I want to do is to make 3 chain, and that's going to represent my first treble stitch in the row. I'm going to put my little stitch marker in now in the stitch directly underneath the hook. So I'm now going to work another treble in exactly the same space as I made my slip stitch and brought that 3 chain out of. So I'm just going to make my treble here. Okay, so in that first stitch I've got 3 chain that's standing up pretending to be my first treble and my second treble. So now I want to make 2 trebles in each of the next 3 stitches, and that will give me altogether 8 stitches. So this is first stitch, and then I'm going to make a second stitch in exactly the same place. And I now have altogether 4 stitches, the 3 chain and then 3 trebles. So I'm going to make another 2 trebles in the next stitch. I'm working through both sides of the stitch. So now when I look, I've got my 3 chain that's pretending to be the first treble and the second one. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so in my last stitch here, I'm going to make 2 more trebles. And that is the first row of the first petal complete. So now I'm going to make 3 chain again. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to turn my work. So I'm going to make 1 treble now in each of the 2 stitches, the first 2 stitches. So I'm missing that 3 chain that I've just made. So 1, 2, 3. And then in the first stitch of my petal here, I'm making 1 treble. And then in the second stitch of the petal, I'm making another treble stitch. Now I'm going to make 2 trebles into each of the next 4 stitches. So this is 2 trebles in my first stitch. Two trebles in my second stitch. Two trebles in my third stitch. And 2 trebles in my fourth stitch. Now I'm going to make 1 treble in the following stitch. And the very last stitch is where I'd put that stitch marker. So I'm going to make 1 treble where I'd put my stitch marker, and I can take my stitch marker out. So now our petal is nearly complete. So all we have to do now is to make one chain and turn around. So we missed that one chain that we've just made, and we're going to make a double crochet stitch into the top of the stitch, followed by 2 chain, 1, 2. Then I'm going to make a double crochet in the following stitch and 2 chain, 1, 2. And then again in the top, both sides in the top of the petal, we're going to make 1 double crochet, followed by 2 chain. So I'm going to continue all the way along the top of the petal, just making 2 chain and 1 double crochet, and it gives you just a lovely little slightly ruffled edge. So I'll continue now till I get to the end. So now when I've finished, I can just snip my end, leaving enough yarn for me to darn my ends in. And I'll take the yarn over the hook, and then I just pull it all the way through and flick it off. And that is one petal done. So I'm now going to join in my yarn into the next stitch. So I'm just going to put my hook through and my yarn in the hook and pull it through, leaving enough yarn to darn in, and make 3 chain to represent my first treble stitch. Then if you feel you need your stitch marker, you can pop your stitch marker in the first stitch underneath the hook, or alternatively you can use a little scrap of different coloured yarn. And then we're going to make a treble stitch in exactly the same place. So that's our first 2 trebles of the first row done in the following petal. So now in the next 3 stitches, I'm going to work 2 trebles in each stitch so that I end up with 8 stitches in the row. So this is the second treble in the next stitch. Then I move on to the next stitch and I'm going to make 2 trebles. And the last stitch, making my last 2 trebles, giving me 8 stitches all together in row 1. Now I can make 3 chain and I can turn my work. Now I'm going to miss that first 3 chain, and I'm going to make 1 treble in each of the first 2 stitches. I'm now going to make 2 trebles in each of the next 4 stitches. So that's 1, 2 trebles in the first stitch, 2 trebles in the second stitch, 2 trebles in the third stitch, and then finally 2 trebles in the fourth stitch. Now we've got 1 more stitch left, so we're going to make 1 treble in that, and then we're back to where we put that stitch marker in the top of the chain space. So we're going to work our last treble into the same spot where the stitch marker was. So the stitch marker has now done its job, and we can take that out. And we're ready now to just do round 3. So that's 1 chain, And this is our final round with the little ruffle. So we've made our 1 chain and turned our work, and then we're going to miss that first chain that we've just made, and in the first stitch we're going to make 1 double crochet, 2 chain, make 1 double crochet in the next stitch and 2 chain. Once more, 1 double crochet in the next stitch and 2 chain, and I'm going to continue along the row again, finishing finally with 1 double crochet in the last stitch. Now I'm ready to cut my yarn. Take my yarn over the hook and flick it through to finish off, and I've got my second petal now made. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches left. That's allowing me 4 stitches for the next 2 petals. So I'll continue round now till the end, and then we will start to make the black center for your flower. So now you can see that we've completed the base part and petals of our poppy. I think the first thing I would do at this stage is to darn some of my ends in, because they can get a little bit in the way. So the yarn that is attached to the edging of your petals, that's quite easy. Just turn your poppy over so that you've got the wrong side facing you. That's the flatter side. You'll find that the right side looks more embossed and you can see the edging. So I turn it over, and then I just run my needle along the back of the petals through about 5 or 6 of the double crochet stitches, just like that. Run it through, and then I can snip my ends. So I'll do that to 1 more. So I've got the yarn that's at the outer edge of the petal. I've got the wrong side of my petal facing me, and I'm just going to run the yarn through the back of the double crochet stitches in that edging. Take it through 5 or 6 of them. It's just a lot nicer to get some of these ends out of the way, because it makes you feel that it's more finished. So again, this is my 3rd one. Just running it through the edges. Now these ends, because you'd fastened off, they are quite secure. The ends that are stemming from the beginning of the petal, you'll need to do a little oversew stitch to secure those. So we'll do that now. So this is my last petal that I'm just running the thread through. So I can now find my center thread that I started with here, and again that's secure, so I'm just going to pop the thread through the needle, and then I'm just going to run the needle around the edge of the back of the flower. And then I can snip that off. And then we've just got these threads from the start of 3 of the petals, because if you remember the first petal, we just continued using the thread from the main centerpiece. So with these threads where we joined on to begin the petal, what I would suggest is that you just do a tiny little overstitch to create a loop, and then you can just thread the needle with the yarn through the loop and pull that tight to secure it, and then you can just run that through the back of some of the stitches, and then you can just snip the ends. So we've just got 2 more. So just to do it again, I'll pop the thread on the needle. I'll just make a little slip stitch in the back of my work to create a little loop, and then I will thread the needle through that loop to secure it and just run it round the back of my stitches. There we go. And we've got one last thread left. So that suddenly feels a bit better that we've got rid of all of those ends. So we're now ready to make the center part of our poppy. So, however, the center of the poppy is in black, and although I have my black yarn here and I'm going to make a center for you in the black and pop that in, it is difficult for you to actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to make my first one in a pale color, just so that you can follow the stitches with how I'm making it. And then I will go on and make another one in the black for the poppy. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to make a slip knot and pop that on my hook. And then I'm going to make 4 chain, just like when we started the main poppy. And I'm going to join that with a slip stitch. And then I've got this little ring to work into. See, it would have been quite tricky if I'd have shown you this in black. Then I'm going to make 3 chain, 1, 2, 3. And then just like the base, I'm going to make 10 trebles into that circle. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I'm going to join it with a slip stitch to the top of the 3 chain at the beginning of the round. So it's virtually the same as how you started your poppy originally with the red center. So join it with a slip stitch and then fasten it off. So now I'm just going to pop that there just so that you can see that that is the size of our center. So I'm now going to do it in black. I'm going to leave a longer end so that you've got enough to sew the center to the poppy afterwards. So I'm going to leave about 12 inches and make my slip knot further up. And so now I'm going to make my 4 chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. Little tip, make sure that you're using the working yarn that's going to the ball of wool, not the, you're not crocheting with the end of the yarn. So then I can join it with a slip stitch. I'm glad I did this with the green first because I can see that it would have been more difficult to show you. So 1, 2 and 3, so I've got my 3 chain, and then I'm going to work my 10 double crochet into the circle. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And then I'm going to join that to the top of the 3 chain with my slip stitch. And then fasten off, again leaving enough yarn for you to darn in. So it's yarn around the hook and flip the hook through, and now I have my black center. So the outside edge I'm just going to darn in. If I feel that the hole in the middle here is a bit large, I can always run that needle around the whole center and pull it in a little bit tighter. So I'm just going to continue around here. See, by doing that, when I turn it round to the right side, I can tighten that up and I can lose that hole in the middle. So I can then just do a little overstitch and thread it through and finish off that yarn. I'll just snip it. And then this beginning end is it is naturally falling from the center now. So I'm going to thread that onto the needle. And I find an easy way with this is as a starting point is literally just to thread the needle through the center of your poppy from the front to the back. So it's on like that. And then if you turn it over, you could pin it in place. I tend to just hold it in place. And then I just do a couple of stitches just going through the poppy and catching that black centerpiece. And I do it in the shape of a cross. So I go one side, then the other side. It's almost like north, south, east, west, so that I've secured all 4 corners. Okay, so that's the back of my flower. Then I'm going to take the needle through to the front of the petals, but fairly near the center. And then I do a few stitches just to secure the center of the poppy more to the flower. So what I do is I do a little running stitch into the front of the flower, and then I come across, directly across like a ladder, and I go through the back of the center, and I just move around, and then I go do another little running stitch through the poppy, and then I come back across and I do another little running stitch in the back of that black center, and then again another little running stitch in the poppy very close to the center, and again another little running stitch in the back of that black flower center. And then again, just working my way around, nearly there, doing these little running stitches, and basically I'm just doing a running stitch in one side and coming across to the other side. Couple more and we're done. This is the last one. And when we've made our last little stitch, we can then just take our needle to the back of our work and finish off. And that is it. Our flower is complete. Now you can make these with any weight yarn that you want to. As I say, this one has been made with the 4mm hook, and it's come up slightly larger and just slightly looser than the option made with the 3mm hook. You could, of course, if you want to even go finer, you could use a 4-ply yarn and use a 275 or 250 hook. That would be fine too. And so I hope you enjoy them. So thanks very much. Don't forget to hit the like button and see you next time.